Advanced Listening Project 4. Part 1. Retell the audio using own words. The primary narratives on the outskirts of the city, a new Buddhist temple, was inaugurated this evening. Considering the wide range of religious attendees, the inaugural ceremony was deemed a great success. Prices for mobile phones have dropped to an all-time low. The cost to purchase and use a cell phone is at its lowest point ever. This is allegedly caused by the price wars and increased utilization of many networks. A woman made history by completing the world's longest bus journey. June, a West Bank resident, rode for 6 to 1 days in a double-decker bus before deciding to get off after the birth of her third grandchild. The opening of an animal refuge is scheduled for the following week. The local council is providing funding for the refuge, which aims to aid abused animals as well as local wildlife. Call the hotline if you want to contribute. Fresh fruit and vegetables are encouraged by health authorities. A diet that is higher in fruit and vegetables reduces uh, the risk of developing serious illnesses, according to research released this week in an effort to persuade locals to eat more than the average daily consumption of 4 meals. Tomorrow will be a chilly day with a high of 8 degrees. You should anticipate some sleep that night and the possibility of wine in the evening. Part 2. Create the note. It all started when the evil queen who has transformed Bertie into a frog was strolling around the palace gardens by the pond. She drove by to talk with Colin for a while because, as you may have noticed, they get along well. When Colin inquired about the well-being of her royal weakness, she launched into one of her portrait friends. Even though she doesn't like animals, Baker the palace dog walks up on slobbers on her hand, and she grumbled about the small children who are constantly leaving their toys lying around the throne room. But above all, she bemoaned the monarch. Abracadabra, fishy stew. Colin has shall be queen, and the king shall be you. Darkness descends, and a chilly breeze blew across the pond, and the ducks and swans scurried onto the banks in search of safety as large wave buffeted the frogs and tadpoles. As for Colin, he was seated on a throne covered by jewels. Is this possible? He thought himself. I'm are breathing and horribly dry, and I'm human. Oh, my heart is so heavy. That must be my exceptionally wise intellect at work. Even when they are suddenly transformed into people, fish are recognized for having large minds. However, a golden crown did not weigh as heavily on Colin's head, and his brain did because the evil queen had transformed Colin into the king. The true king was swimming about in the pond's water. A servant in red livery reported that the gorgeous Princess Beatrice was about to enter the chamber with a group of the smallest and nicest little girls who lived in the castle, just as Colin was still a little perplexed about what had transpired. King Colin thought to himself, actually she is not so bad after all, and discovered that his face was smiling back at her as the charming Prince Beatrice kissed his hand, bid him good morning, and commented on how handsome he was looking that day. He found smiling to be pretty unusual because as a fish as he could do was gawk. It did feel wonderful to smile. The young girls who had accompanied Beatrice were all dressed in pink dresses and made delicate curtsies. Colin suddenly realized that the Eiffel Queen was on the throne next to his. She repeated what she had learned and said, "Don't you think those teeny girls are completely repulsive?" Let me make them all tadpoles so I may send them to the pond to eat slime. Colin declared, I think I shall be called King Colin the Wise after they had left. Since you can see, I'm really intelligent. And while he wasn't looking, the queen pulled a face at him. The chamberlain then entered and questioned His Majesty about his plans for lunch that day. He remarked, the cook suggests either fish fingers and chips or sausage and beans. The chancellor, who was in charge of the kingdom's gold and treasure, arrived in later in the morning to meet with the monarch. He said that they had raised more money than they had anticipated and asked what they should to do with it. The evil queen was enraged when she learned this. You foolish girl, she cried out. What in the world makes you think we would want to waste excellent treasure on some sickly children with runny noses? Let's use the funds to build a new palace. This one is deteriorating fast. The day continued until King Colin left in his golden chariot pulled by 6 white horses, to the applause of everyone who watched him pass by. Colin practiced his smile as he waved back at the passers-by. He reflected on how lovely it was to be so well liked and to be admired by everyone for his charity and intelligence. Being referred to throughout history as King Colin the Wise rather than King Colin the Grumpy was much preferable. He arrived at the Prime Minister's residence by car and informed him that he needed to pass a new law immediately. Up on the balcony, Colin saw a vast ocean of angry faces surrounding the palace. Many of them were wearing blue paint on their faces and waving flags. They were football supporters, you see. They began to chant, Knick knack paddy whack, give a fish a throne, splish splash wicked twag, send him splashing home. However, King Colin the Wise was a bold and dependable man. He continued talking after that. Football is sport of honor. It's played on a field of honor, and football is a beautiful game. Due to their love of football, the audience became a little quieter at this point, and several of the professors in the crowd ordered everyone to quiet down and pay attention to what the monarch had to say. Now most of the people were listening, but a little boy at the back of the crowd called out something very rude about Colin. Can you guess what he shouted? You can. Well, I'll tell you. He called King Colin the Wise Coat Face. Coat Face? Exclaimed King Colin. I'll have you know that I was once a champion card. When they heard this, everyone laughed, because although Colin was a human king, his face did look rather, well, fishy. Colin grew very angry when the people looked at him and he started to splutter. Well, the least you could do is stop kicking a stupid football around and go back to work to earn some taxes for the treasury. The wicked queen, who was listening to all this, and she could not hold back any longer. She picked up a microphone inside her chamber and shouted into it so that everybody could hear her voice echoing around the palace ground and even in the town square. To right, everyone should work harder, you lazy and ungrateful lot. I want a new palace. Now there was uproar. The crowd was turning very, very angry. He turned around and saw a silly little tadpole called Tim. Normally he would have been highly irritated by such a pointless question, but today he found it rather comforting to see little Tim. I don't know, said Colin. In fact, I don't know anything very much. I'm just an ignorant old fish, you see. All I do is go for a swim all day. And with that he managed to turn his gulp into almost a slime. Part 3. Make a note for this story. Once upon a time, there was an old man, an old woman, and a little boy. One morning, the old woman met some gingerbread in the shape of a man. She ate it, using icing for his hair and clothes, and little blobs of dough for his nose and eyes. When she put him in the oven to bake, she said to the little boy, "You watch the gingerbread man while your grandfather and I go out to work in the garden." The old man and the old woman went out to dig potatoes, leaving the little boy to tend the oven. All of a sudden, the little boy heard a noise and looked up, and the oven door popped open. Out of the open jumped a gingerbread man and went rolling along and over towards the open door of the house. The little boy ran to shut the door, but the gingerbread man was too quick for him and rolled through the door, down the steps, and out into the road, long before the little boy could catch him. The little boy ran after him as fast as he could manage, crying out to his grandfather and grandmother, who heard the noise and threw down their spades in the garden to chase him. The gingerbread man outran all three a long way and was soon out of sight. On went the gingerbread man, and by he came to two men digging a well, who looked up and called out to, "Where are you going, gingerbread man?" The gingerbread man was running away from home when he came across two men digging a ditch. The men asked where he was going, and the gingerbread man said he had outrun an old man, an old woman, a little boy, and two well diggers. The men then chased after him, but the gingerbread man eventually gave up and sat down to rest. Later, the gingerbread man came across a bear, who asked where he was going, and he told him he had outrun an old man, an old woman, a little boy, two well diggers, and two ditch diggers. The Gingerbread Man is a story about a man who outruns an old man, an old woman, a little boy, two well diggers, two ditch diggers, and a bear. The bear is left far behind and decides to rest the roadside. The gingerbread man then comes to a wolf who has outrun an old man, an old woman, a little boy, two well diggers, two ditch diggers, and a bear. The wolf then sets out to outrun the gingerbread man, who goes on and on so fast that the wolf too sees no hope of overtaking him. Finally, the gingerbread man comes to a fox that lay quietly in a corner of the fence. The most important details of the story are the gingerbread man's ability to outrun the wolves and the fox's ability to outrun them. The gingerbread man's ability to outrun the wolves and the fox's ability to outrun the wolves are key elements of the story. The gingerbread man was a story about a fox who set out to outrun an old man, an old woman, a little boy, two well diggers, two ditch diggers, a bear, and wolf. The fox is unable to hear the gingerbread man and decide to bring him closer. The gingerbread man comes up close and screams out that he has outrun an old man, an old woman, a little boy, two well diggers, and two diggers, a bear, and a wolf. And he can outrun them too. The fox snaps up the gingerbread man in his sharp teeth in the twinkling of an eye. The story of the gingerbread man is rather sad, but Bertie disagrees, saying that gingerbread is extremely tasty.